again, too many of us. Okay. Thank you very much, Aaliyah. And Roby, it's on you.
Okay, I gotta just do got it so I can see. First of all, thank you, Fatima, for the lovely introduction, all your help, and Paul. But I want to welcome everyone and a big welcome to all of you from Inc. and Inc. people. Thank you for all you do for the issues I'm going to talk about now. I also want to thank Jonathan Friedman and Susan Nazell as well at Penn, and Chris Finan, CEO of National Coalition Against Censorship, and Nora Pelizzari, Director of Communications, and all those at NCAC and Penn for ramping your work up and up and up and up significantly as more restrictions on who can read continue to rise. I think the last number I had, and I think it's too low, above about 440 bannings this year, the highest ever, according to ALA. But it seems that more keep coming on, and not all are reported, so that librarians, teachers, booksellers can be helped through these times, and creators of children's books, of all books, but children's books we're talking about, uh, for fear of losing jobs, or because it's easier just to pull the books off of shelves, which is understandable, but sad and upsetting. So even though I'm going to be talking about a book I wrote, it's perfectly normal. I'm only using my book as an example of what has happened to me as a children's book author, as a case study, because it's the case I know the best. But this is something, be it a book challenge, which lots of people don't know the difference. Maybe all of you do, which means that someone has challenged a librarian or teacher or bookstore owner and asked for a book or a video or a piece of art to be taken off the shelves. It even can go into dance of a public library or public schools. I mean, independent schools are not part of the First Amendment, but it happens there too. Um, a book is different. A book banning is different. A book banning means that the book has actually been taken off the shelf and is no longer available to a child who may want or need to read that book, or comes across it by happenstance in a library or bookstore. As you may know, this has happened to so many children's book and YA book authors, including Penn members, and I'm sure there are many of you even here, Susan Copeland's Beyond Magenta, Fatima Your Book, Vicky Cobb, and we could go on and on. And it can happen to any one of us or any other authors, artists, and people in the realm of science, history, art, and the list goes on and on. So on to my case study. I'm going to give a quick history about how this book started, because I think it can, I hope maybe you'll glean something from it. So here's a quick history. In November 1988, the day after Election Day, I was sitting in the office of an editor named Michael Demany, and he had been the editor of the first book on AIDS. Nobody even talked about HIV then. It didn't term didn't exist. Um, the book was Randy Schultz. He was a San Francisco Chronicle reporter of great renown, and the band played on. Michael and I were talking about the state of children in America, and he said, "Would you like to write a book for kids about AIDS?" And I said, "Oh, Michael, I don't know enough about AIDS to do that, but the book I would do would be a comprehensive book on sexual health for kids roughly ages 9 to 14 or so." And I began to list all the things I would put in this book. I didn't even write them down. He was writing them down. And he offered me a contract, was about to call my agent, and I said, "Please wait. I don't think I know enough. I need to talk to people. I need to learn. I don't even know if I want to do this book." Well, he said, "You know, you will be banned." And I said, it doesn't matter to me. What matters are the kids who might not have access to information. But my ego and, if a book gets pulled out, it's not the worst thing for me. I hate it. I don't like it. But it's the kids that I worry about who may not get the information they need. So I left and I sent him 3 chapters, and then in a month, and he only wanted to do the book on AIDS and offered me even a bigger advance than I had ever had, but I said no. And the rest is history. In 1992, entered artist and my dear friend, brilliant artist, Michael Emberley. I told him that no matter what anyone told us about the art or about my text, if it was in the best interest of the child, it was going to stay in the book. We would not listen to people who just said, you're going to get in trouble. And I had warnings from well-meaning people that my career would be over. And I've heard that kind of thing today just through gossip. Okay. Let's just say book gossip. I can't, it's not peer reviewed research. So Michael agreed. And my first wonderful editor, Amy Ehrlich at Candlewood Press, bought the book in 2 weeks. And she said at that time, the book has to be a book that reflects you and your values and what you care about, because by what we choose to write and what we choose to say reflects our values. You may or may not agree with them. And this continues to happen with my wonderful now longtime editor at Candlewick, as Amy retired, Hilary Von Dusen. So moving onward, I realized that there was someone in Cambridge I actually knew who ran something called Political Research Associates, and her name was Jean Hardesty, and they're still around today, and they're on this issue as well. And I thought, Michael and I need to know how to respond. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't know what to do. And so Michael and we met with her and her whole staff, and we spent the day with them. And the thing that I remember the most is that she said, leave your prejudices about the other side of the door. Realize that they too care about their kids. And they too, not all, but they too are trying to figure out what to do with their kids and what's in the best interest of their kids. And I think I learned a lot about it. She also said to me, I will tell you this, and other authors who've been banned do different things. While a protest is going on against your book, either a challenge or a potential banning, do not go and visit this where it's happening, because the focus will come on you and boost their case. And she said, talk to the press, talk to, if we could, talk to the librarian or the public librarian or the teacher or the bookseller. And I did a lot of that. And at that time at National Coalition Against Censorship, and I must say, I'm on the board. Full disclosure here, talk about the truth. But I'm also a long time PEN member. So and they're both great places, the best. Anyway, we did learn, and do not go to these events, and so I don't go. Other authors choose to go, and that's their right. I'm not criticizing that. I'm just saying what I do. And I'm not afraid to go, because I always say I'll come afterwards. And I've done that. And there's still feelings afterwards, no matter what, we're within the community and for parents about their kids, etc. So then, and I recommend doing this. I said to Michael Emberley, all of us who are working on this book need to be on the same page about what we say. You know, the head of marketing at Candlewick is saying X, and the head of publicity is saying Y, and the head of Candlewick is saying Z. We have to have a message and one message, and it needs to be consistent. So Jean Hardesty and one of her staff members, don't remember the name, came to Candlewick, and we had a 3-hour meeting, and the whole staff was there. I mean, someone had to answer the phones, etc. And they were asking all kinds of questions about, you know, how do we do this? What would you recommend for that? And that was very helpful. We actually had a plan and a person in charge, and things got funneled to her. And then where did it go? To marketing, publicity, editorial. So I recommend that to anybody, to talk with your publisher, you know, if you're a worker, and you may already be doing that. I need to say, people tend to like it when their books are banned. Not everybody. Because they say, okay, there are more sales. Well, first of all, I didn't choose to write a book on sexual health because it would be banned and then there would be more sales. I wanted to write it for kids so they got the most up-to-date, etc., you know, accurate, medically, psychologically, emotionally accurate information, and they could make good decisions and stay healthy. Most kids enter puberty healthy. But when it happens, so I don't go. But when it happens, and I've had many authors, and I am be in touch with me and say, you know, I feel this way. And I said, look, I felt that way. You're not alone. And I think if we can be a community together, and I think Inc., you're probably trying to do that, and certainly Penn does it, and NCAC. So we've got some wonderful resources here. So when it first happened, when I find out about it, I just think, oh my gosh, here I am sitting inside, you know, in front of my computer, and get let out every once in a while to, you know, to make a talk. But I don't generally, mostly, although I did in one community, live in the community and have to meet people as the librarian who's defending, or the person who's bringing the ban, and have the conversation go on morning, noon, and night. And it's really upsetting. And so I feel sort of like, oh my goodness, why did I write this book? Why am I doing this? And I feel very guilty. And then I remember why I wrote this book. If it was only for one child, and this is a disturbing story. I'm going to talk about truth in a little bit, and I'll tell you why I keep at it. So I will in just a moment. So last May, newly revised, again, I'm not pushing this book, but this is the book I'm going to show you some little art and read you a little bit of text. It's last May, there was a newly revised, updated, and verified edition of Normal was published, and it has been the most comprehensive book of all. It took us over a year. That is, myself, I rewrote, and Michael redrew, Hilary Van Dusen re-edited, and we expanded gender. Gender had always been in there, but we expanded it, put the name in the title. Some of the art changed in the cover, which I can show you, because I should give, and tell me if you can see this. Can you see it?
Can
No,
you turn off your special background?
I can't, and then I'll lose you, I think.
Wait,
I just,
it's,
okay,
because you're using a green screen, it's not.
it's not coming through.
Hold it right in front of you, close to your body.
Oh,
Don't
that's
don't
a good idea.
don't let
There
it
you
cover your
go.
face. Keep your, if you could stand
Above
up
your
higher
face. Right,
and
stand
keep
up.
your
I'm
face
too
only
short, I'm
showing.
too short.
Ah,
I'm
There
probably
you go.
there it appear. Oh.
Now put
Closer
it in
to
front of
yourself.
your sweater. There you go. That's it. Whoop.
So many
Oh,
people wish that would happen to that book.
yeah, you know what? Some people are destroying it. Okay, well, I can tell you. So the title says Changing Bodies, Growing Up, Sex, Gender, and Sexual Health. And some friends of mine even said, you know, do you want to put gender in there? It's going to stir up the right wing. I said, they've been stirred up for years. Are you kidding? Are you scared? Are you
Oh,
worried?
good.
No.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you.
Oh, Liz,
Oh.
thank you, cousin Lizzie.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, so it was clear about sexual orientation. There was more about that, about sexual intercourse, abuse, both in the text and the art. I added intersex. And every time I did it, I would run into somebody saying, are you sure? And I said, yeah. This is what, first of all, kids already know so much of this, but they already have, as I talked about, so much misinformation. And if this only changed one child's life, then to me, it was worth writing this book. And I'll tell you that in a minute. And it's either today or yesterday, Governor Abbott in Texas. So we're jumping forward, and I'm going to go forward and back a bit. Banned any materials or any books in schools on LGBTQ plus that had anything to do with LGBTQ plus, and you know, and meaning, you know, meaning that if we think about, I mean, this just enrages me, but if we think about the high rate of suicide that has tragically always been for many in that group of people, and kids, teenagers, and particularly, and we think about it, that it's gone up, especially during this pandemic, I just find it outrageous. So the question becomes, what do all of us, is there something we can do? And I'll talk about that a little bit later. And however, some things I just need to share with you, and that is that I no longer speak with the other side. When I say that, if there's, it doesn't always happen, if there's a radio interview or a TV interview or something like that, if someone, we always tried to find out at Candlewick who that person was who wanted to interview me. And it often, I would say 8 times out of 10, I didn't keep track, 8 times out of 10, I'd start out and people start screaming at me and yelling at me. And finally, after 5 minutes, I say, you know, no, nobody's going to learn anything from one another. This is about our kids, and I'll repeat this over and over again. And how do we help them to stay healthy when it comes to sexual health? And they would scream and call me all kinds of names, and I can take that. But I felt it was helping the other side and not helping us. So I had trouble putting myself in the shoes of the other side, even though I was told to do that. So, for example, I'm called a pornographer, and every other name in the book. I'm called a child abuser. When teen pregnancy was on the rise just before the pandemic, I was told that I was responsible for the rise in teen pregnancy in this. I was responsible for the rise, I was told I was responsible for the rise in teen pregnancy, which actually was a lie. We talk about lies today and truth, because during those years, there was the lowest level of teen pregnancy ever in this country and in the world. But the lies were out there, and so it's always been happening. And no, I'm not a pornographer, but I do write. And now I'm getting my book back. I have to see where I put it. When I put it down. I think I flipped it somewhere so I can use this one. Um, what I, so kids already know about porn. And I'm going to just read to you a little bit about porn and what I say about it. But I am not a pornographer. I want you all to know that. I do speak the truth for most of the time. So here it goes. You may find yourself, this talks about pornography. If you happen to end up on a website and you see anything or read anything that makes you feel uncomfortable in any way, remember that you have not done anything wrong. You thought you were going to a responsible website and then ended up somewhere else. Now, the rise and the number of kids and the lowering of the age of the kids who go on the internet and see pornography, actual pornography, is very, very, very disturbing. Even in households where they're not allowed to do it, they go to a friend or somebody else. And there's data on that, good data. You may even find yourself on a site that has photos or videos of naked bodies or sexual acts that are created to make a person feel sexually excited. These kinds of photos or videos are called pornography. Many people use the word porn as a short way of saying pornography. Some kids do not want to see these kinds of images at all. Other kids are curious about them and may find them exciting. Even so, and this is one of the few times in this book and the other nonfiction books I write, I do say what people think. Even so, people think that, most people think that kids should stay away from porn. In some cases, passing on some kinds of porn over the internet to others can be risky and might be considered illegal. It's absolutely true. That's one reason why it's also important to talk to a trusted person if you end up on a porn site, no matter why or how you ended up on that site. And then I go on to describe exactly what porn is. And so that kids know what it is, that it's mostly fake, not, I mean, real people, but fake. And to understand that people don't treat each other in a respectful way. So it says, what is important to know and understand is that what really matters in any relationship involving sex is that people treat each other in a respectful, caring, and loving ways. And so I, that's what I wrote. That's what I think. And anyway, abuse, that is ramped up too. I'm told that abuse has risen because of me. There have been some articles about that because of Michael's and my book. And it's not just the Texas, the art too. Consent. I've been told by the right. Well, what do you think that does? That gives kids permission to have sex, and that's why there's such a rise today. Well, no, consent is that you need to ask for consent. And even in one of the younger books in the series, It's Not the Store, I talk about if a friend asks you to climb a fence that you feel is too high, or, ride your bike too fast, or take your clothes off, just sort of a list of things. This is a time when you don't have to do what a friend tells you to do. You can say stop, no, don't. And if things don't stop, then you need to go find the result. You need to go find again, I keep using the word trusted, a person you trust to help you out. And again, saying, I don't say it all through the book, but you haven't done anything wrong. You were in a situation, you said no. I don't use the word consent there just because they're young. I also, Liz, maybe you could hold up page 23. I don't know if you can. getting to it.
Maybe if Liz could say something
I've-
and people with speaker view would see the picture.
You can also pin, you can also go to Liz's thing and pin her and then she comes up large.
Here's
I don't know. You don't need it large.
Elizabeth Levy.
Yeah, it's page. I don't know what that is.
No,
Okay, so
Woodford.
here's what just happened recently. It was in Book Riot that has done a wonderful job on reporting and responsible reporting of what's going on now. Perhaps this is in Florida. Perhaps it's noteworthy in both in Illinois this happened. In both cases, the challenges have been especially scandalized by one particular section, and it's perfectly normal. The page features an individual with a vulva, which looking at the various parts of anatomy with a mirror. In Florida, the challenger called that a jaw-dropping experience. And then it said CSE, and I don't know what that stands for because it's also happened in Minnesota. Will remove the natural and protective boundaries for children and teens. One recommended teaching book uses pornographic illustrations and graphic descriptions to teach children as young as 10. And this is what I was talking about, all consensual sexual activity is their right. I don't. A lie. I believe it's a lie. It teaches kids how to consent to sex, masturbate, experience, climax, promote multiple sexual orientations and gender identities, and how to have safe vaginal, oral, and anal sex. Look it up. It's perfectly normal by Robie H. Harris and see what you think. It reads with a paragraph following this that what I am doing is grooming per the FBI's definition of grooming. And, so far I haven't had. Now, Lizzie, can you, Michael Emberly did that drawing and everybody at Candlewick approved. Can you turn the drawing upside down? This is the way Michael first did the drawing without the mirror. And I looked at it and said, oh no, we can't use that. And he said to me, why not? And I said, because it's too inviting. It's too, and there was no mirror. She was just bending over like an acrobat. I said, there's no way. And Liz, could you turn it back? I turned it back this way. And I said, that works. People use mirrors. Some kids use mirrors. Kids want to find out what, females or want to know what their genitals look like. And it's just finding out about your body and how it works. And now that's my take. There's nothing more than that. So thank you, Liz. But I mentioned gender earlier, and one can see from the cover, as I said, that the kids on the cover, and we don't need to look at it again, can read it, and I say read it any way one sees the art. Michael drew the kids, and we had conversations about that, to look and be more ambiguous. So one may see them as gay, or another person may see the kids straight or male or female. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's how you see it. But we were also told that, why would we have, from the right wing, why would we have someone in a wheelchair? Why wouldn't we? And we added a child with a prosthetic leg later on in the book. So, and we added, as I said, the word gender to the subtitle. What I do worry about, and that is unconsciously self-censoring myself. And what does that mean? Deciding not to write a book about what people think are difficult topics. And I did write a book called The Day Leela Said I Hate You. So a word I wasn't allowed to use as a child. But I do hate that term, difficult topics. The topics that many of you write about and I write about are part of kids' day-to-day lives. And they need to have those parts reaffirmed that there's nothing wrong with them. And their wondering is perfectly normal. So it's difficult for parents and educators to talk directly to their own kids about sex, sexuality, gender, and the changing wording and views about gender, about intercourse, and not just intercourse between those who identify themselves as female or male, but those who identify themselves as LGBTQ+. What I worry about now more than ever, and I always did, is about the information that is created purposely to keep kids of all ages from obtaining the real and medical and psychological and emotional information and facts, which I have every expert around the nation and even in the UK read the manuscripts and say you're off here and here's why. And if this is taken away from kids, they can't have the information they need to stay healthy. They could get it from some other books. That's why I wrote Normal. And I wrote several other books about its sexual health. And they too have been banned. And other books of mine have that have nothing to do with this, just plain picture books, have been banned. So what's happening now, which Jonathan Friedman spoke so passionately about just a few weeks ago, has only become worse. Every day this becomes worse, as Susanna Reich was saying before we started. You know, there are articles everywhere. Everybody's sending me articles, which is great, but it's happening everywhere. More books are being pulled out of libraries. And because parents are taking over the job of professionally trained teachers and librarians. And this again is in public schools. It's happening in independent schools too. And our state legislatures have drafted and passed laws that make it possible for parents to choose and have books taken out that they don't want their child to read. Not caring, for example, if I had a child in the school and I believe my child should go into the library and choose anything. And not caring about what, I as a parent would hope that my child would have the freedom to read. They're taking away that. They have no professional experience to do that. And I don't even think I do as a children's book author. And I think that those who are trained in librarianship and teachers too. And they love the work they do. I want to talk about democracy and in democracy. And what I want to say about it is that this has happened about 12 or 13 times. And I think I know that's how many times. I have 13 written down and some notes of mine. This teacher said to me, this librarian said to me, Robie, I would not have your book, It's Perfectly Normal, in my home. I wouldn't buy it for my family. I wouldn't use the book. I wouldn't give it to anybody. But it's my job in a democracy. I love it. It's my job in a democracy. I can remember her words so clearly, to have a range of highly reviewed and responsible books so that kids, families, whomever can come in and find a book that suits them. But they have to be, highly praised. and whether she's talking about stars or whatever. And I've heard that over and over again. And so if to me, she's a hero, and she's a hero in our democracy. People have called me that. I don't think I am. I write books. They sell or they don't sell or whatever. They get into kids' hands or they don't get into kids' hands. I don't really have that. And what she's talking about is kids' right to read. And certainly Penn does that, and NCAC has a group, it has a program called Kids' Right to Read, and kids are in it. So if it's disturbing what's going on. Teachers are being threatened. Surveillance cameras are in classrooms, tires slashed. People standing outside people's homes and just standing out there. In one community at a book signing, a Proud Boy came on his motorcycle and was not smiling, gritting his teeth, didn't say a word, and book talk and a book signing, and several people left, and there were young children there and older children. And so what is happening now that I find so dangerous, and while I worry about all of us as writers or artists, the optimism in me feels there'll be one day when all of us, and that includes those who are older and younger, will be able to write freely again. But censorship will always be there. It's always been there. What I worry about, though, is for kids of all ages, if books are banned because they will cause a child to be upset, children get upset. I get upset when I read books sometimes, or because someone believes that our history does not matter. And why in the world should we have books that have history in them? And truthful history, of course. There is kids' right to know the truth, seek the truth, follow the facts, and then figure out what you think. And that may not be what I think, but be informed with facts, not just opinions. And we all need to do the same with the books we create for children of all ages. And these bannings are not only happening to books about sexual health, but about people of color, and the list goes on and on. Also, values. My books, by what I choose to write, reflect my values. Yours do yours. If you don't want to, and I say to people, if you don't want to have your book in your school library or in your home, or you don't buy it. And always go to the local library or bookstore and read through books on sexuality and see if there's a book for you, or maybe there is, maybe there isn't, but you just don't buy it. But this is coming, and I'm winding down here so we can get some questions. I'm checking the time. Yeah, just have about 4 or 5 more minutes or less. This is not only coming from the right, it's also coming from the left. Now, I made a choice. It's my choice. I'm responsible for it. I stand up for it. I'm proud that I made it. I've always wanted, it's perfectly normal to be for all kids, okay? And from the get-go, I always included not only straight kids, but LGBTQ plus kids. And I decided, and with my editor and with other people with whom I consulted on gender, that there are some places in the book where I would need to use girl or boy. For example, and I never use it alone. It's not all through the book, so that every child who's reading this book could identify and find oneself in the book. So in some places I say most girls or most boys. In other places, I use the science name. And the genitals, the science name is the female parts or the male parts. That's the scientific name. When it comes to abortion, I spoke with the woman who is second to the woman who's before the court for about Roe v. Wade. And she said to me, Robie, maybe you're not going to like this, but I've read your whole book. But there's one thing I have to say about, and things work really beautifully, but there's one thing I have to say about the abortion chapter. You have been accurate about every single law, forget the name of the law for, from the Supreme Court for gay marriage. Doesn't matter. And you've always, when you've talked about the law, you've been 100% accurate. And you've written a woman or a girl. Thank you. Oberfeld versus Hodges. Thank you, Susanna Rice. She knows. You've always been 100% accurate. And the law reads women. It does not read women and girls. So when you're talking about the law, you want to be accurate. That's what you need to do. And in a few paragraphs later, when I'm not specifically talking about it, I talk about girls and teenagers I talk about, or younger, because I use a lot of, gender-free language all the way through the book. And what happened is that one reviewer said something to the effect of, how could Robie Harris, right, do what you did to this book by using girl and boy? I did it because I believed, again, it was in the best interest of the children, and I wanted to include everybody. So I don't have any regrets about doing it. But, these are people from the left. One example is that I was walking out of my building, and this woman was yelling after me, Robie, Robie, Robie. So I turned around. She was someone who had kind of tried to be a friend of mine, and but I didn't even remember her name, and I never had liked her. And she said, I just want to tell you, you've ruined your book and you won't sell any copies. I said, oh, really? How nice to see you. No, I didn't say that. and she said, I wrote down what she said. It's the gender stuff. You use the words girls and boys in the book. You're so wrong to do that. And showing that art of intercourse between two men and two women, how could you? Well, we had written about sex between two men and two women, but Michael and I had neglected to talk about putting in drawings, and we put in drawings are lovely, and gay couples looked at them and checked them and loved them. And these are people who we knew and who would tell us the truth if they didn't work. So we have to, and then she said, my sales would just plummet. And I said, it's been okay talking to you, but I really have to go. And she ran after me with more questions. And I said, we're done, conversation over. So just so you know, and what's happening on college campuses, but so we have to tell kids the truth. If we tell kids something they know is untrue, they stop listening to us. The same thing with our books. If they are not truthful, our books, and this applies not only to nonfiction, but to fiction. If we won't put in terms of fiction, strong and powerful emotions from love, joy, hate, sadness, loneliness, fear, unhappiness, we could go on and on. These books will not feel true to kids. Because to one extent or another, all of us, children of all ages, have these feelings, and seeing themselves in the book can make them feel that they are not alone and that their feelings are perfectly normal. So what can we do about this? I'm finishing up. We can keep on creating the books that we believe we want to do. And I think I didn't mention that I almost didn't do a book after that woman that I wanted to do, and I ended up and I wanted to do it, and I was lucky. There was a lot of luck here. I sold it. It was sold. But what we have to do, every single one of us, and I heard Art Spiegelman say this the other night, and he said it many times, to resist, to speak up, to speak out, to write letters to editors, to go to our local school board meetings. We have to be very, very active now to help to try to get this to at least calm down and stop. And there are some successes. Bring your kids with you, your friends, your grandchildren, the doorman at your building or whatever. Letters to the editor, go online. We have to get more kids to speak out, and I don't have time to read one other thing, but as many kids have won their battles to keep books they want to read in the library, including Toni Morrison's book, The Bluest Eye. I mean, my hope is in these kids. Kids can make a difference. And you think about the fact of the Greta Thunberg quote, "You're not too small to make a difference." I'm going to tell 2 quick stories and I'm done. I'm going to answer questions. And so I was at the Vermont Library Association many years ago, and a librarian stood up and said, a man came to our library and I saw him do this, and he took the copy and he stole the copy. It was perfectly normal. I knew where he lived and knew who he was, but I bought another one, and it happened time and time again. And it happened over a year, and then she ran out of money to buy the books herself, and some community people bought the books. Bought some books, but not a lot. And so kids could take them out. A year later, she received the book that he took, the first one he took. And he said, I was wrong. I'm the man who took the book. My 13-year-old teenage daughter is pregnant. And she's going to have the baby. And if she had it's perfectly normal, I believe she would not have become pregnant because she knew nothing about this. And some kids get pregnant accidentally and do know something. So here's the book, and then he also sent in a new copy. So we have a nice copy, which is quite a lot of stories, quite a lovely story, and then I'm just going to end. There's lots of stuff, and it's perfectly normal. I have these 2 cartoon characters, the bird and the bee. One thinks the bee thinks everything about this is gross and disgusting, but gets fascinated by the science as I was, and the bee, and the bird wants to know everything there is. And here's what they say. Normal or gross? The bird. Do you think it's normal, or do you still think it's gross to talk and think about bodies and sex? I think it's normal and gross so that you ask me that, says the bee. You do? And they're Michael's wonderful drawings of the bird and the bee. You do? Just kidding. Get this. If there were no bodies and there were no sex, there would be no human race, says the bee. Get this. Most kids think about bodies and sex, and many kids talk and even joke about it, says the bird. I bet grown-ups do too, says the bird. And then there's pictures of him, just the bird laughing. Well, it's true, says the bee, that writers write about it, and painters paint about it, and scientists study about it, and musicians sing about it. And the B says, and TV and radio and videos, movies, all tell about it. And books, the internet, magazines, ads, and commercials. But, he added the internet later. The B says, enough. Thinking about bodies and sex and wanting to know about the sex, thinking, says the B, about bodies and sex and wanting to know about bodies and sex and even talk about it. And they both say together is perfectly normal. And then the bird said, we finally agreed on something. And the bee said, we did. That's the end of the book. So there's a lot of lightness and a lot of topics that are so difficult.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Robie. That was, thanks a lot. It was very illuminating to tell us about the book and about some of the challenges. If you guys have questions, I think now that I didn't see any questions really coming in the chat, but if you have them, why don't you just unmute yourselves? Or Aaliyah, you want to unmute everybody? Or can you unmute everybody? I had a question. Did they while everybody's getting unmuted, did you ever have to go to court? Has anybody actually legally challenged you where you had to go to court, and how did you?
No, but in Portland, Maine, and now I'm trying to think of the other town. Portland's not a town. A woman took copies of It's Perfectly Normal out of the libraries, just stole them.
Mhm.
Then she went home and she sent it a check to all the libraries and said, I took these books because no child should ever, read or have their eyes look at this book.
Mhm.
And but this will cover the cost, and please use it on other books.
Mhm.
And the librarians hadn't talked to each other, especially the two head librarians. And they both wrote back the same kind of note to her. This is before the internet, and said, what is it? They said, we're not a bank and we're not a bookstore. And so we can't accept your checks. Just bring back the book.
Right.
She was then pulled into court,
Mhm.
and they spent 3 months in court. Now, meanwhile, that's costing the city tons of money. It's the city, tons of money, which is wrong, and taking up the judge's time. And she had a lawyer and etc. And finally, the judge said, you know what, we're going to stop this because it's taking up too much money. And I was very, very, very disappointed. Not that it stopped necessarily, but that then she wasn't given something like to give back in community service, not to libraries. She was not to libraries.
Mhm.
And, and we had that happen in Philadelphia, an American Library Association dinner where I gave a speech, and a woman was took the book from the library and threw it on the ground and smashed it and stomped it and spit on it, and then the police came and they did not put her in jail.
Mhm.
But nothing happened with her. The only thing is that she was barred from all the libraries in Philadelphia.
So I mean, I see that the challenges that are coming up now, I mean, they're raucous, and they're legislative. I mean, they're trying to change laws. So I'm wondering how
They
can
are changing laws.
how can authors respond to this
I-
kind of
I think within your community, you show up, and maybe it's scary to show up, but I think you show up at these places and you stand up and you speak out. I think, this is also, modeled on what happened with abortion in Texas. It's an absolute model. And by the way, one of the things I left out about this and it's not quite answering your question, is that there are these groups online. One is called Moms for Liberty.
Yeah.
And if I were a parent, and even if I did know about this, but with kids, I mean, I am a parent, but a young parent, and I was trying to sort of figure out, and I was browsing around. I saw Moms for Liberty. That's interesting. I think I'll go there. And the website and the head of it sound exactly like you would agree with them.
Mhm.
And then you see the list of books that Susan Folkman knows about this. I mean, you see the list of books that are on there that are that are recommended not in libraries. And these people are highly funded by the Koch brothers and other right-wing groups. And no matter what you think about the Koch brothers helping with climate change, et cetera, they're still doing this stuff. Not the two older, only one is still alive, or maybe both of them aren't anymore, but their family is doing it. And it's still keeping books out of the hands of kids. So I find it much more scary these days. As I said, I'm not afraid for myself, but I find it much more scary for those out on the front lines. I think it has to be so hard walking into school, walking through those lines, and it just reminds me of walking into a Planned Parenthood with people along the side yelling and screaming obscenities and lies, etc. That's happening to our teachers, our librarians, for our children, for America's, not everybody, but a good percentage of in these states.
Oh.
And people used to say to me, "Oh, book banning, your book isn't banned in Vermont, right?" And I said, "Yeah."
Vicky.
Yes, it is, and I can tell you where and how. And it's a town called Weybridge. This is a while back, right next to Middlebury, Vermont. Middlebury College is, and it's very strongly Democratic. Weybridge voted to keep It's Perfectly Normal out of its schools, and it was a pediatrician who said only I should talk to the children.
Right. Well, there you go.
So it's what's happening now. Randall Kennedy, who gave a talk at Penn, he's a professor at Harvard Law School, and he's also
Yes.
anyway, he finds this one of probably the top thing that he's worried about for our democracy, because we're going to have these kids growing up not knowing what a democracy is and not being able to think, to wonder, to keep things from happening again, to try at least. We can't keep everything from happening.
So listen, Robie, we've got some, listen, guys, you can unmute yourselves. You can unmute yourselves, Aaliyah says. We have a few questions here, and Vicky is asking, are there any books for kids that are disinformation that are being banned? And Maya is saying, seems like as though librarians are on the front lines and many are eager to protect the books, but I don't know how. Are there resources for librarians who want to protect books when they're pressured by people who want to ban them? And Maya spoke to a librarian at my local library who seemed as though she didn't know how to handle the pressure. So are there resources for librarians?
She did or didn't know how?
She didn't know. So Maya, do you want to ask it some more? Because I'm just reading.
I'll try. I have to be quiet because I'm in my writing studio at Malay. But basically, yeah, it just seems like librarians are largely, wanting to protect the books and keep them on the shelves. But the librarian I spoke with, at least, just seemed like she had no idea how to handle the situation. And I'm just wondering if there's any sort of organized effort to help librarians in their efforts to protect books. Is there any sort of organization or program to help them?
if I could answer a little bit to that, I mean, I would think the ALA would have
Yeah.
procedures in place, because I just wrote, and I know that school libraries, many school libraries have like a collection policy that explains how their collection is formed, and it often includes like a challenge policy, which says, if you think one of these books should be removed, here's how you go about it. And it's a long form they have to fill out, that, and then if they have to return it within like 2 weeks, and if not, the matter is dropped. And, so it's kind of, it's putting a big burden on the person protesting or challenging the book to speak up and say why, and what book do you think would be better for this? And it's like, 10 or 12 questions. And then if the person does go through that, they then, there's a committee is formed that includes a parent and a teacher and a student, and it's discussed, and then the head of school gives the response to the person and says, this is what the committee's decision is. So I would just, I don't know a lot about public libraries, but I would imagine there must be similar things in place, and that ALA would have something. Most librarians belong to that.
Yeah, ALA is every group, including in its way Penn, is doing things. The ACLU, the just all these nonprofits all over the place are scratching their heads and yet working hard. Penn just put out a manual.
Yeah.
NCAC is a coalition, but a much smaller entity than Penn, but they work together to try to see how can you support these people. But to me, the threats are I'm repeating myself, are beyond disturbing of what it's doing to to the professionals' lives and their income. I mean, I talked to someone who knew someone, so I don't, this is just, anecdotal again, of a librarian who said she was staying at a school because she was well off, right? She lost her job. She still could get along. But other teachers who had threats were terrified and felt and left their jobs, but felt they couldn't afford to take that risk. And it's all over the map. It's not, as I said, just here, but it's not just in the red state, in what we think are red states.
So are there, like, as Vicky asked, are there places where, or is the left coming at disinformation, books that have disinformation, or books with disinformation being published, and is the left coming at them?
I'm sure. I mean, I can't. I don't know the answer to that. But I think. I mean, I am not for censoring books that have misinformation. I wish they didn't. I wish they didn't. I think, again, if we think about the First Amendment and what it really means, we should talk about publishers, though. And Candlewick is doing this not only with me, I think with you, Susan.
Yeah.
Copeland? Yeah. They are sending out to a massive list. So they, I believe them when I say so. They said, and I got to write something. And I wrote, in a democracy, any kid. Now, kids are usually left out of when this is being talked about. Any kid, school, library, bookstore, healthcare, or religious organization that chooses to read or have a book has the right to do so. So they're I'm sure there are many other publishers who are who are working on this too, and perhaps doing the same thing. I don't know that, but it didn't come from me. I got called from Candlewick and said, would you be willing to make a statement about what's going on now? So publishers are very disturbed about it. Are the books, the more progressive publishers, to use that term, are the books they publishing going to sell? If, they've got a bottom line issue and then an ethical issue.
Well, I know
think this
some
is
of
wrong.
our Penn trustees, we have a couple of publishers as Penn trustees, and they've definitely are supporting our efforts, the efforts and freedom
Right.
to read. And I mean, they're really going all in on it this year. I think you probably saw Marcus Doley has given 500,000 to Penn over the next 5 years to support these kinds
Yes.
of issues,
And
so
it's happening at other nonprofits too.
yeah,
People are very disturbed about it,
yeah.
as they should be, as we all should be.
It's a disturbing thing. Does anybody else? I want to say before we close up, and I want to, if we have any other questions too, that Penn, anybody here, if you know someone who has been banned, you can interview them for our Pen Pals. We've been running a sort of regular Pen Pals, and the Penn organization, Aaliyah is so kind as to, she's going to put them all on one page on the Penn website so people can go right to it. And Pen Pals is the CYAB's response to some of these challenges. Interviewing one author interviews another about the reasons, not so much the reasons their books were banned, but the reasons they wrote these things that people think are offensive. So why did you write about gay young people? Why did you write about sexuality? Why do you, so that people can actually read and hear our side of it, before they go and ban things willy-nilly, so keep
I
an
was
eye
gonna,
on Pen Pals. Christine? Yeah.
I was gonna make one comment. One, my kids will be 27 and 32
Mhm,
this year.
mhm.
And, I grew up in Cleveland and my mom didn't hide things. We were not sheltered. So I didn't raise sheltered kids. We always said, feel free to talk about anything that you want to talk about. But we also grew up in the inner city. And one of the things I have to point out when I'm in children's conferences is there are cultural differences between what certain communities and parents will allow their kids to do. So I find a lot of authors saying, when a kid's this age, they don't know this. And I go, not my neighborhood. So one, I wanted to say this, but I also want to share something she might think is funny, which is I think I've got this right. I've had these books forever. And my daughter, despite the fact that we don't shelter in this house, you look at whatever you want out in the open, was reading that book in the closet. And there was a scene where it said, if you don't understand something, ask an adult. So she comes out of the closet and says, I don't get what it is I'm not supposed to understand. And so she's showing me the picture and I had to think about it. And I said, oh no, it's an illustration to represent if out in your life you encounter something you don't understand, come ask an adult. She said, oh, because I thought I missed something in the picture. And but we still have those books, have enjoyed those books, and have recommended them to friends because it was so honest. There were illustrations of people in different body types and nudes, but I know that we're probably outliers. There are just so many people, and the reason why I think that's important is I was an MIT interviewer for about 30 years, and I was still encountering kids applying to college who didn't know things, didn't do their own laundry. So those are likely the audiences that want to ban the books, is they don't want their kids to hear about it from anyone but them. I get their kids in 12th grade and they still haven't heard it. So kudos for you for writing the book. It's a fan favorite in this household.
Well, kudos to
I'd
all.
just like to interject one thing, Robbie. I understand
Yeah.
the anguish of wanting the truth to get out in the right way. But what concerns me equally these days is that we've just had a pandemic where the truth about the science behind the pandemic has been like a, you know, what do they call it, a free throw. You throw it up in which way, whatever way it goes, and that there is no, and we're being exposed to lies and propaganda. And what I want to know is what is happening on the other side of this, where lies are being presented as truth.
Right.
Is anything happening on that front? I don't know, but I don't know that you know. But this is something that concerns me very much, because we're dying because we don't have this kind of.
Well, we need to call out the lies, and we need not to just, we're all tired of it. I'm not sure everybody does publicly. I think everybody doesn't publicly. We have to, our politicians have to. We as citizens have a role, I feel, to call out the lies about any of these things or anything we're interested in. That's why,
I have a granddaughter who's a nurse in Wisconsin. She's not in Wisconsin now, but she was in the inner city taking care of COVID patients. And they didn't believe they had it when they came into the hospital. They didn't believe they were dying. They didn't believe it was real. And they fought her, and they were angry with her because she was trying to take care of them. And they didn't believe in it. So I think that this is, you know, we've always had banned books going back to Galileo, who wanted to move the center of the universe. And we've always had banned books where the truth has been suppressed. But now we have something, I mean, but publishers have been fairly responsible about what they publish. Most publishers, I'm guessing, I don't know. But now we have these Wild West platforms where people seem to think there's an egality of ideas. And if I think of my ideas is just as good as yours. What do you do about that?
That seems to be the failure of so many things, education.
I'm looking for a role for Inc. for my authors.
Well,
my
I would like to
speak that are so scrupulous about subjects where you wouldn't think there would be a bias.
It seems to me that participation in local government is a very, very important thing. And I don't know how that connects with writing and writers, but until there's an organized movement to basically infiltrate or to get more influence on the part of the right wing who don't look at science and truth as the issue, but just, you know, getting their power is the issue at the expense of any kind of truth. So until
it's the control of the medium and the platform. I mean, you know, Facebook has not taken this responsibly. And if you look at the origin of Facebook, it was a mean thing. You know, Zuckerberg invented this thing where girls were rated by boys anonymously online.
Yeah.
It had no altruistic anything. It was just a place to be mean.
but we have to have people who, Paul's exactly right, this has become political. And Paul is exactly on target here. And that is that we have to start at the ground up of electing people to local school boards, to local community boards, who are willing to speak up and willing to stand up for what they think is their truth. I mean, people think their truth. They're not gonna-
I have to tell the truth here. I'm sorry, but I have to tell the truth, and it is 6:32.
Ooh.
And I have to close the meeting because Aaliyah is overtime now.
Yeah.
But
I just wanted to
if you
repeat.
guys want to continue, you can Facebook
Yeah.
each other some kind of way or
Thank you.
something like that. Continue. I love our
Yeah.
conversation.
Thank you, Robie.
Thank you
If
very
you
much.
want to
Robbie.
continue it, come back next month and we can keep talking about it the whole time. But I have to let her go. And I love seeing y'all, but I got to
Thanks.
close the meeting.
Good night.
Bye, everybody.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night, people.
Bye.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Robie.
Appreciate you.